Good morning, everyone. We have a lovely full house this morning, and we appreciate everyone being here today. This meeting, this regular meeting of the Nags Head Board of Commissioners for Wednesday, August 7th, 2024, is hereby called to order. If you will, first please join me in a few moments of silence. And now, if you will, stand as you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda, and a motion would be in order.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That brings us to recognitions, and we will start with a new employee and call Chief Hale up.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here before you today to introduce Elizabeth Moran, our newest employee who is administrative assistant for our department. Elizabeth was born and raised in Columbia, North Carolina, and she graduated from Columbia High School in 2014. She attended Beaufort Community College and has an associate's in applied science and criminal justice. She is no stranger to our profession, as she started as a dispatcher in Chowan County in 2017, and then she transferred to Dare County Communications in 2019. She has a wealth of knowledge in our CAD system from the dispatch side, and she's very eager to learn the reporting side from the law enforcement perspective. Elizabeth is engaged to Blake Cutrell, who is an officer with the Duck Police Department, and they're set to be married in March of 25. They reside in Columbia. In her off time, she enjoys fishing, especially offshore fishing, and just being on the water. We're excited to have Elizabeth and looking forward to many years to come. Congratulations and welcome aboard.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a recognition for 10 years of service, and Chief Hale will stay right where he is.
Guess I shouldn't have left. It's my pleasure to come before you again today to recognize Senior Police Officer Jimmy Pierce for 10 years of service with the town. Jimmy came to our agency after retiring from ALE with 30 years of service in law enforcement, to include some time with the Hereford and Dare County Sheriff's Departments. We joke with him that he didn't even let the ink dry on his paperwork, being that he retired from the state on Friday and started with Nags Head on Monday. Jimmy has a wealth of knowledge that he brings us, and he is not one that doesn't put it to use. Jimmy is assigned to animal control, but is very active in our department in covering shifts, taking calls, and giving advice to younger officers. He is one of the department's general instructors, and specializes in firearms and driver instruction as well. Jimmy is not one to sit around and ask someone to complete a task for him if he's able to take care of it himself. He has been assigned to the maintenance of our firing range and rarely asks Public Works to take care of anything that he can do. In his free time, Jimmy enjoys taking his children to the farm to hunt, fish, and ride four-wheelers. Jimmy, congratulations on your 10 years.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's tired.
That's the man responsible for it right there.
Thank you, Officer Pierce, for that 10 years of service. We really appreciate you. The next is still Perry, and this is a recognition for 20 years of service.
Indeed. This was supposed to happen in May, Mr. Mayor, but we finally got her in here today. It's my pleasure to be here before you today to recognize Dee Johnson, our systems administrator, for 20 years of service with the town. Dee started with the Nags Head Police Department in 2004 as an office assistant and was promoted to our systems administrator in 2019. Dee has a wealth of knowledge not only for our department operations, but of the town as well. Dee is the person behind the scenes that keeps the department compliant with numerous annual audits that are required by the North Carolina Criminal Justice Standards. And she also handles many of our IT needs for the department and makes sure officers are able to perform their duties with citations, crash reports, and DCI transmissions. The days of handwriting tickets and reports are long gone. There have been many days when Dee has stayed after hours, long after hours, to make sure that the night crews are up and running with all this new technology. The most recent project is our new RMS system, which she has taken the initiative to make sure the system runs as smoothly as it can. Neighboring departments rely heavily on her knowledge of the system and call in weekly and sometimes daily for her assistance with this project. During her off time, Dee enjoys being on the boat, traveling, and spending time with her grandchildren. Dee, congratulations on your 20 years. Thank you.
So much. And I'm going to ask Dee to stay with us for a picture and ask the board to please come around.
Good you're long enough to know.
The next item on our agenda is a proclamation in support of the 150th anniversary of the establishment of the U.S. Lifesaving Service in North Carolina. And I think, Ralph, are you prepared? Can you present before I read the proclamation?
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you. And I have with me today Sandy Sanderson, who was Regional Ocean Rescue Chief in Nags Head before he went on to Emergency Management, directing that for Dare County. And he is now on the Planning Committee for Chickamauga and the 150th anniversary. So I want to recognize him as a former town employee and a vital person on our team. So thank you again for the opportunity to make this presentation about a wonderful portion of the American history, and it's based right here on the Outer Banks. And by the way, thank you also for your forthcoming proclamation in support of the 150th anniversary of the United States Lifesaving Service. The Chickamauga Historical Association is the sponsor and organizer, and National Park Service, Outer Banks Tourist Bureau, and Black Pelican Restaurant are co-sponsors. Okay, and work this down, hopefully. Let's see, it's not rolling for me. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. So if I can do this. So, you can't tell the story without of the Lifesaving Service without mentioning Sumner Kimball, a young lawyer from Maine who came to Washington as a state representative. Kimball was a highly effective leader and administrator, considered by many to be the father of the Lifesaving Service, and by some people also to be the father of the Coast Guard. Sumner was named the chief of the Revenue Marine Service, a department within the Department of the United States Treasury, in 1871. He was able to get $200,000 from Congress for expanding a very small group of unmanned federal lifeboat stations located mostly in New Jersey. $200,000 was a lot of money back then, and it was a tough fight to get that. High on his list of priorities were the dangerous waters off of Virginia and North Carolina, known as the Graveyard of the Atlantic. He ordered a young architect on his staff who had studied in Europe, where maritime life-saving was much more advanced, to design an attractive but very efficient building. Okay. Come on down. Okay. And 10 stations were to be built initially from Cape Henry, Virginia, to Avon, North Carolina. Sumner knew that that was not enough stations, but it was a good start. So a contractor from Newbern, North Carolina was chosen to build the stations in the summer of 1873, starting with Little Kennekeet and Avon and Chickamaucomico in Rodanthe. All the materials, of course, had to be shipped to the Outer Banks, as well as a crew of men to build it, with a goal to be finished by the time for the winter. Unfortunately, there was some miscommunication about the plans, and Little Kennekeet had to be totally rebuilt once, and the onset of winter was not completed. Back then, the Sound would freeze over in the wintertime, and you couldn't provide any logistic support. So that was a huge setback. The contractor was fired, and the new one was hired from Elizabeth City with the contract to complete Chickamaucomico, build the Oregon Inlet and the Nags Head Station, the same contractor. The stations were to be manned by a keeper and 6 surfmen who were only employed seasonally from December through March. The stations were about 12 miles apart, which made patrolling the beaches very challenging. Having problems with this thing. Roll on me. Yes, please. Yep. Okay, next one. Good. As remote as the Outer Banks were in that day, logistics and communication were difficult. Fortunately, Sumner Kimball had pushed for the U.S. Army Signal Corps to provide telegraph communications for the life-saving stations and the lighthouses that were also built in the early 70s. And that feat was accomplished in January of 1875, and a year-round weather observer and telegraph operator and repair personnel were stationed at the Kitty Hawk Life-Saving Station. Quite a technological achievement for that day. The telegraph line also connected to Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, and that had been completed in 1870. Electronic communication had come to the Outer Banks, and it was possible to send weather reports 3 times a day to Washington, D.C. for compilation and forecasting of the weather, rudimentary forecasting. Things were looking encouraging, but then tragedy struck. On November 24th, 1877, 8 days before the start of the life-saving season, the United States USS Huron, a Navy vessel, wrecked on the coast of Nags Head, 2.5 miles north of the unmanned life-saving station. They missed it just by a week. Unfortunately, there were 98 casualties in that, and it was terrible. But then, to make things worse, several months later, there was the wreck of the Metropolis, January 31st, 1878. This is in Currituck County. This was close to the Jones Hill Life-Saving Station. And the crew from that station, which was 4 miles away, responded, having to drag their cart, beach apparatus cart, through the sand. They arrived late and ill-prepared, and they ran out of propellant for the Lyle gun, and they couldn't get back in time to do an effective rescue. Unfortunately, there were 85 casualties with that. So these tragedies caused an outcry in the public, and Congress reacts by summer of 1978, and 1878, legislation is passed to greatly organize and expand the overmatched Revenue Marine Division, and a new separate United States Life-Saving Service with year-round keepers was formed. 30 new stations are authorized, including 15 for Virginia and North Carolina. Many of those were between the existing stations to reduce the patrol and response distance in half. By 1905, the network of stations on the coast of North Carolina had grown to 29, and by 2015, there were 270 stations nationally on the East Coast, East, West, Gulf, and Great Lakes. By the way, if you get a chance to go out to see the great exhibit at Bladen Street Access that town has recently renovated, and has some wonderful displays there. So here you have a map of all the life-saving stations that were done, the 29 stations, stretching all the way down to Oak Island. This provided some very effective coverage for the graveyard of the Atlantic. And in general, they were busy, and they were very successful. So, in 1915, decision was made to merge the Life-Saving Service and the Revenue Cutter Service into a new United States Coast Guard. In the life of the Life-Saving Service, there had been 28,000 vessel responses, and 178,000 lives were saved in the Life-Saving Service's tenure. So that was quite effective and good return on the investment there. So with it being now the United States Coast Guard, in a time of war, the Coast Guard could become part of the Navy. And of course, 2 years later, the United States enters World War I. And fortunately, the Outer Banks are covered in that period of time, because we have the war actually came to the east coast of the United States and here onto the Outer Banks. If you get a chance, go down to Chickamauga and learn about the Merlot rescue that was during World War I. In World War II, the U.S. Coast Guard is again called on to the defense of our country. The Outer Banks is known as Torpedo Alley because there are so many submarines, German submarines operating here. It's a very, very active area. After World War II, technology has changed, and there's no longer a need for so many small stations on the coast. And so helicopter, of course, has been invented, refined, and much better boats, so they can fill the gap quite effectively. Many stations on the Outer Banks are closed in the 50s, but the U.S. Coast Guard continues to cover this area today with, of course, the new stations that they have at Oregon Inlet, and at Hatteras, and the Elizabeth City Air Station. So I'd like to now just take a few minutes to talk about Nags Head's role in all this. Now, I'll put on a different hat as a citizen, resident of Nags Head. The Nags Head station, again, was part of the first 7 stations in North Carolina. We can take quite a bit of pride in that. In case the the mayor calls me on this, that is not the original design. They bumped out the side back there. I think that was probably after 1878. But that's a good representation of all the stations, 1874 style and later 1878 stations that were built. Okay, next slide. I want to point out where this station was located. And unfortunately, we got kind of a grainy map here. It's an 1879 coastal map. But if you look in the upper right, if you strain there, you'll see there was an old inlet located just south of where they placed the Coast Guard station. And if you look at the top of that, there's actually also shows a Nags Head Hotel that was built in the, I believe it was 1830s. But I think that old inlet, and you don't see it in other charts very easily, U.S. charts, but that was the Roanoke Inlet, and that inlet closed in the 1850s. There was actually an attempt to reopen that inlet. Congress appropriated $50,000 for that to be dredged and reopened, and that failed. But there was also some concern it might open again naturally. So that's why the Coast Guard station was located on the north side of that inlet.
Mr. Buxton, I'm going to need to stop you there and go to the resolution. Do y'all have an event coming up that you would like to highlight?
Yes, right. I'll go through this very quickly. The Nags Head station, though, was lost and damaged by the Ash Wednesday storm in 1962. As you can see, it had been turned over to the Army. The site of the Nags Head station, if you wanted to find it today, is across from the Windjammers. It's at where the Windjammer condos are currently located. And if you look north from the Epstein tract, there's actually a strip of land there. It was the original Coast Guard station. And that's my presentation. And I thank you for the time today. And I would just like to put a plug again as a citizen here that perhaps maybe the town would consider marking where the Lifesaving and Coast Guard stations were located in the town.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a proclamation honoring the 150th anniversary of the Chickamaucomico Life-Saving Station in Rodanthe and declaring October 2024 as a Life-Saving Service Commemoration Month. Whereas during the late 1700s and early 1800s, an increase in maritime trade resulted in the greater possibility of nearshore shipwrecks occurring along the east coast of the United States, and whereas at that time large sections of the eastern seaboard were sparsely populated, leaving sailors with little hope of being rescued, and whereas in 1848 the foundation for the future United States Life-Saving Service was laid when the United States government provided funding to provide life-saving services, and whereas increasing maritime activity subsequently resulted in greater loss of lives and vessels along the eastern seaboard, and whereas on April 20th, 1871, the U.S. Congress appropriated $200,000 in funding for life-saving purposes. And whereas by 1874, funds were appropriated to begin building 7 life-saving stations along the coast of North Carolina, the first of which to be completed was the Chickamaucomico Life-Saving Station in Rodanthe, which was commissioned on December 4th, 1874. And whereas construction of all 7 life-saving stations, Chickamaucomico, Jones Hill, Caffey's Inlet, Kitty Hawk, Nags Head, Oregon Inlet, and Little Kennekeet were completed by October 1874. And whereas over the course of its 44 years in operation before it was merged with the Revenue Cutter Service and became the U.S. Coast Guard, the United States Life-Saving Service responded to 28,121 vessels, and of the 178,741 lives that were in peril at sea, crew members successfully saved a record number of 177,286 lives. And whereas we note that October 2024 is the 150th anniversary of the arrival of the United States Lifesaving Service to the coast of North Carolina, and whereas we reflect upon the rich heritage of the men and women of Nags Head and Dare County who sacrificed comfort and risked their own personal safety to save the lives of strangers in danger at sea, and whereas we acknowledge the tireless work that continues to preserve the heritage, stories, and legacies of the U.S. Lifesaving Service in North Carolina, we, the Town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners, do hereby recognize and celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Chickamaucomico Lifesaving Station in Rodanthe, and also proclaim October 2024 as Lifesaving Service Commemoration Month in Nags Head in honor of those who so bravely served in the U.S. Lifesaving Service along our shoreline, this being the 7th day of August 2024. Having heard the resolution, a motion to adopt would be in order.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate you being here. That brings us to the presentation of some actual life-saving awards. And I'll ask Chief Wells and Captain Motes to come forward, please.
Distinguished Board of Commissioners, the beaches of Nags Head are renowned for their beauty, tranquility, and making them a wonderful destination for vacationers. However, during a medical emergency, these same beaches become a harsh and challenging environment, particularly when the task at hand is as critical as restarting a person's heart. Today, we gather to honor the calm, competent response and unwavering commitment shown by our dedicated team. Their swift actions in the face of such an emergency have undeniably saved a life. On Sunday, June 9, 2024, near our Hollowell Beach access, Mr. Clay White suffered cardiac arrest. One of the most critical medical emergencies a person can face. Nationally, the survival rate is around 10%. The first to respond to Mr. White's emergency was first-year lifeguard Dunya Hage. She immediately began CPR and requested additional resources. She was soon joined by lifeguards Mason Lenz, Ocean Rescue Supervisor Michael Federline, Rainier Gilbertson, and Acting Rescue Captain Michael Dew. Nags Head Fire Rescue Captain Wolf, Lieutenant Trevor Tilley, and Engineer James Phillips were in their district returning from an errand when they overheard the radio traffic on the Ocean Rescue Channel. Captain Wolf immediately diverted his crew to the call, took command of the scene, and had his crew join in the resuscitation efforts. This team was well aware of the uphill fight that they were facing, as this was their third cardiac arrest call in 3 shifts. But this outcome would be different. Through the combined efforts of our team and personnel from Dare County EMS, Mr. White's heart was restarted. He was transported to the Outer Banks Hospital and later transferred to Norfolk for definitive care. Mr. White has made a full recovery, and he and his family are here to show support and gratitude to the members of Nags Head Fire and Ocean Rescue. In times of crisis, it is the courage, commitment, and compassion of individuals like this that make a difference. Their collective efforts exemplify the highest standards of service and dedication to the safety and well-being of our community. It is with great pride and pleasure that I, alongside with Captain Motes, present these dedicated first responders with life-saving commendations. Their heroic actions and commitment to protecting and serving others truly embodies the spirit of Nags Head. Okay. I'm going to yield the floor to the family.
Hi, my name is Clay White. I've been coming to Nags Head for, gosh knows, a very, very, very long time. My parents used to stay at a trailer park called D. Charbonnel, and then they bought a house and a lot and built a house down on Heyman Boulevard. And I am truly blessed by what has happened over the past. You guys absolutely are the greatest. And without a doubt, I would not be here now, and I'm so happy that I am here now. And I want to thank you guys again. My wife would like to say a few words.
I want to say a few words on behalf of my husband, my family, and myself. We're so eternally grateful to the Nags Head Ocean Rescue, the Nags Head Fire Rescue, and the police department, and also the Good Samaritan bystanders that came together to save my husband's life on June 9th. We've been calling you all Earth Angels, and it's true. We believe that God helped us in our time of need, and everyone was in the right place at the right time. But also, it is because of you and all your rigorous training, quick and precise action, and respect for the job that saved his life. To me, there's no higher calling. You guys are truly angels on earth. It's because of you that my children and grandchildren can spend many more happy summers and holidays here with Clay at the place we hold so dear. We hope to pass this on in our continued support for Nags Head Fire and Rescue. And I'll say one last thing. At a time when sometimes news or events can make us dismayed, this has reminded me and our family of all the goodness in humanity, the power of a good Samaritan. And I hope you all can see that also every day. To the Fire and Rescue Department, for your choice in a career at the Fire Rescue, or guys, a summer job at Ocean Rescue, you are truly doing divine work. This little town of Nags Head is full of Earth Angels. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
They would like to present pens and awards.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, of course.
We'll go over here.
And then we'll hand them over to you guys.
Let's do lifeguards first.
So our first award goes to first year lifeguard Dunya Hogg. We'll go to firefighters. Do me a favor and just step over. And the second one goes to Mr. Mason Lenz, second year lifeguard. Next we have Supervisor Michael Federline. Next we have Supervisor Ryer Gilbertson. And finally, on the Ocean Rescue side, Acting Captain Michael Dew.
Now we present the firefighters. First award is to Captain Phil Wolf. The next award is Lieutenant Trevor Tilley. final award is Engineer James Phillips.
Thank you. It's hard to speak. We appreciate your remarks, Mr. and Mrs. White. Thank you, and thank you for being here today. And we are indeed very grateful for the work of our staff, and that you do have those many more years with your children and lovely grandchildren. I'd like to also thank our wonderful staff. You know, they do good work every day. It's not always as dramatic as it was on the day that you will remember forever, but they do that kind of good work every day, and we are very grateful for them, and we are very proud of them. I would ask first if our rescuers who've been honored would line up, and Mr. and Mrs. White, if you would take a picture with them, and then after that, I'll ask the board to come around and stand behind everybody, and we'll get a second picture if you would. And if you would like any of your family to join you, I think that would be wonderful. So if I could have the White family and our rescuers come up to in front of the podium here, please.
It's for dignitaries only.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, Ralph, visiting with Chicken Monica. But yeah, try to keep as active as I can.
I think it's cool.
Follow me,
Until next summer. But that should work out well. We're trying to plan something that, kind of celebrate the 50th anniversary and do that. We're looking to host
Well, it's worthwhile. It's an organization that does wonderful things. Great thing. If, I can help with
Good job, guys. Thank you. See you. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Yeah, it happens. It's not uncommon. I've heard it, yeah. I've heard it's a real risk.
Well, I wanted to get public comment done first.
I'm with you.
Okay. Yeah, just give it a minute. It would be cool to have a marker. Wow.
It's because the three little islands out there. The other is Pond Island.
Yeah. Certainly puts a different spin on what we actually see.
I hadn't really thought about that, but you're right.
You also have
And there was one.
cow in the cow is in Wellborough.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I think it was.
You have to show me where.
Yeah, it really does.
Right through the village.
Highlight.
Okay.
It is good stuff.
All right, we're going to proceed on.
All right, John, let's go to public comment.
It's like Jim Valvano said, to have a full day, laugh a little, cry a little. It's a full day, so we've already had a full day today. So. Right, so we will proceed to public comment, and I will call on Mr. Leidy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, the board welcomes members of the public to provide comment on matters of public interest or personal interest. This is not an opportunity for dialogue, and the board rarely responds to these comments. But anybody who wishes to address the board with their comments, please approach the podium. Start by telling us your name and where you live, and then I will let you know when your 5 minutes is just about up. So, who would like to go first?
Hello, I'm Colleen Hogan, 6321 South Kingfisher Street. I'm here to talk about the no parking on Lakeside. I would like to see as much no parking as possible, enforced as soon as possible. As I've stated before in meetings, the street's already chaotic as it is, and then coming down the street and having cars parked up and down is, it's scary and dangerous. And once the hotel comes in and we have people looking for parking spaces, it's going to be worse. So I'd like to get that done now if we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Anybody else?
Good morning. I'm Molly Harrison. I live at 407 West Lakeside Street. And I appreciate you guys considering this further. It's very important to us. I've reviewed what the police chief has recommended for the parking modifications. And while I think it's a good Band-Aid for now, like for the parking situation we have that's going on now, I recognize that the reason that we're even talking about parking on Lakeside Street is because of the hotel. So with the hotel coming and with the potential for the hotel coming, I think we need to extend this farther and have more areas for no parking. I feel like if the hotel is there and there's not enough parking as there is at the hotel, then they're going to be coming out looking for places to park up and down Lakeside Street, and for that matter, Bob White Street, because it's right around the corner. So I do believe that the parking should be extended farther down Lakeside Street when the hotel is here. I will say that in our neighborhood down on Old Road, it is a extreme flood zone, so to confuse the situation a little more, whenever we have flooding situations, everyone on Old Road kind of scurries up Lakeside and wants to park on Lakeside Street for the duration of the flooding. So I'm hoping that if we have no parking down Lakeside Street, all the way down, that there could be some exceptions for residents in cases of flooding. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrison. Would anybody else like to address the board? All right, if not, at this time we will conclude the public comment session.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, speakers, and thank you, John. That brings us to the consent agenda, and you have that before you, and a motion would be in order.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. I think at this point, it's been a pretty full 45 minutes, so I think we will take a short break, take a short recess here. for just like 5 minutes and grab a cup of coffee, and then we'll come right back. Thank you. All right, the board has returned to session, and the next item on our agenda would be reports and recommendations from the Planning Board and the Planning and Development Director and Director Wyatt. Good morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. We'll pull the report up on the screen for everyone as we go through, and I'll try to go through pretty quickly for everyone. The Planning Board held their meeting Tuesday, July 16th, and the majority of what was on that meeting is what you've already thought about as part of your consent agenda. Those things will be moving to public hearing in September, but what we had there was some discussion on multifamily dwelling developments, discussion on allowing single-family dwellings to be included on sites for religious complexes for staff housing above and beyond what you would have for clergy. And then also some text amendments related to the dormitory use in the SED 80. So that would be there to help facilitate workforce housing for the town. The Planning Board, their next meeting is going to be August 20th, 2024. There'll be continued conversation about multifamily dwellings. And also there's a rezoning request to look at rezoning a property from C3 to C2, the currently vacant property right behind TW's. So that's going to be on their August 20th meeting. Moving down in the report, as far as the Septic Health Advisory Committee goes, I'm going to skip over that one because you're going to be getting a presentation from our environmental planner, Connor Twitty, and Deputy Planning Director, Joe Costello, in great detail about this item coming up next. For the Estuarine Shoreline Management Plan, the town was awarded a $500,000 grant under the North Carolina Resilient Coastal Communities Program, and that's to look at the design work for Villa Dunes and Soundside Road, and we're looking at other grant opportunities for the Outer Banks Visitors Bureau and Harvey Tract. We do have some great progress to announce on the electric vehicle action plan. Those EV chargers are now installed. They're over here just across from the shipwreck. We just have one more item to go, and that's having Soshan install an access point so that we can get Wi-Fi out there. But that's pretty much ready to go, and I just want to thank Public Services for all of their help. We couldn't have done it without them. Sand relocation and dune management cost share program that was also on your consent agenda this morning. Seems like we just ended it, but we're now getting ready for the next round, kicking up in November. Public Beach Coastal Waterfront Access Grant, the June Street improvements, the grant for that was submitted last Thursday. Do want to give a shout out to permitting staff over within the planning department. You can see our third and fourth quarter permit turnaround time. So 3 days is actually the max. We're averaging 2 days mostly. And just to touch on Dowdy Park events, obviously a lot going on. The music that would normally be scheduled tonight, that's been rescheduled. So just keep an eye on the webpage. Our event coordinator will update on when we will see that again. Last night we had a storytelling event, which is a little bit different than what we normally have for family fun nights. Because of the weather, it got moved to the Epstein Street Beach Access. So small crowd, but it actually turned out really nice from what I've heard. Everybody thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a really great location for that as well. And I think that's it. That's the highlights. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Before I turn it over for questions about your report, one of the things that you just mentioned and that was on the consent agenda, and it didn't need to be pulled out on the consent agenda for discussion, but I do want, for the benefit of our citizens, to highlight the sand relocation and dune management cost share program. And I note in the report for that, under the under the consent agenda, for example, we've gone from, in fiscal year 2021, from 155 sand relocation permits to, in fiscal year 23-24, 280 sand relocation permits. And over the last couple of years, from the amount dispersed in this program from fiscal year 22-23, 217,000 to the past year, 419,000. So would you talk a little bit about the success of that program and what's going on?
Sure. Absolutely. As you've mentioned, every year it's gaining more and more momentum, and we're having more citizens participate in that. What you had before you this morning was a request to allocate $400,000 for the citizens of Nags Head to be able to obtain that money to do sand relocation projects as well as stabilization projects post relocation. So sand fencing and sprigging. If you've never participated in this, you have an opportunity to get up to $3,500 for both sand relocation and sprigging. That's on a 3-year cycle, so you can have access to that $3,500 on a 3-year cycle. And then you also have access to 1,000 of that if you're just going to do sprigging, and that's going to be available to you every year. So it's a really exciting opportunity for people, and I appreciate the Board of Commissioners and their consideration and allocation of the money to help offset these costs. I think everybody genuinely appreciates it.
Very good, thank you. Board members, any questions for Kelly on her report or comments?
Thank you for your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. And that does bring us to the year-end overview and update on the Todd D. Kraft Septic Health Initiative, and I think Connor's going to come up first.
Get all this.
All right. Morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I just wanted to do a quick physical year update on the Septic Health Initiative program that we're doing. So we ended up with 117 septic inspections done by myself and our 2 contractors, Kevin Carver and David Sweeney. We issued 121 water bill credits that we updated in 2022 for the $150 that they can get once every 3 years, and we ended up processing 9 loans this physical year. So, you know, it's a good problem to have, or that, you know, don't want to see people with failing systems, but at least we're able to help them fix on the financial side of fixing those systems. Just highlighted some of the goals that the DWMP update highlighted with getting, you know, working towards the goal of 500 septic inspections annually, and then the goal of 250 credits per year. Continuing some more outreach activities, we still have the booth at Dowdy where I hand out, we have the septic health bags, cups, pins. The clings you see on the bottom left was made by an intern we had through ECU last spring. I believe she was here. We've given those. I give those out. Just answer any questions. I made a little flyer about the program that has the website and QR code so people can scan and it goes straight to our page. We added a portion to the CRS mailer that just went out recently. We've gotten 8 to 10 calls from that already. People doing wanting inspections or credits. We included it in the newsletter that went out to the town. We got some good traction from that as well. In the late fall, early winter, we installed 15 groundwater level loggers and 2 water quality. We just ordered 4 more that'll be installed this fall. The 2 that are installed already, we have 1 at Station 21 in South Nags Head, and then one's on the end of Soundside Road on the bypass side. And then we also, working with Deputy Planning Director Joe Costello, we got a GPS locator. So the plan is to go out and locate the tanks and drain field and actually have their exact precise location. and then kind of leaning into that, more we're working on is we're going to try to incorporate a web map that shows the location of tank, drain field, last inspection, last credit. I think we're going to try to do age, and then kind of incorporate some of the data that we're going to get from the water quality and the water loggers, the level loggers. And I'm going to let Joe step in and explain a little bit more about the his map on top.
Hello, good morning, Mayor Commissioners. Yeah, so the plan is we got this high-end GPS collector. It utilizes RTK technology to really collect the data of where things are in the physical world up to a centimeter, which is exciting and powerful. And we're going to use that with the ARC Collector app. So it'll kind of function like it's an antenna to this application on your phone, which, your phone knows where you are, but it's not very exact. So we'll use this in tandem to collect where the septic tank is and where the drain field is, and that'll directly go into our web map, which we have set up already to kind of receive that data. And so once we build that out, we're also, with this water quality logger information, we have what's called the Adjournment cloud, where all this information goes. So the idea is eventually to have all this septic health data as far as where the tank is, how old it is, when it was pumped, all the information that Connors and the other inspectors are already collecting, immediately populate into this web map, and we'll be able to layer that with all this water quality data we're collecting, and be able to do spatial analysis to further understand basically our water system. So in the DWMP, there's a list of goals related to collecting this data and putting it out in a format that the public can consume and that we can do more analysis with. And so hopefully that's what this process does. Happy to answer any questions you guys have.
So we have a certain number of data loggers in the field now. Is there any sense to get a better distribution eventually? Has anybody projected out to see how many do we really need out there in the field to complete this task of the picture of the water quality?
I think the DWMP says, what we're doing now, the 4 that still need to be installed is what it recommends.
Okay.
So I don't know if there'll be a further level of analysis needed. I would kind of pass that to David to answer
Right.
on that end, but at least from like the GIS collection efforts and ability to look at those things comprehensively and cohesively, hopefully this process will do that.
Okay, cool. Board questions, comments?
Just thank you for your presentation. I got to hear it at our meeting the other day, but having the entire board and the citizens here, what great work y'all are doing. We really appreciate it. And I think we're well on the DWMP of checking off those goals that were set.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah.
So then, getting back to the Septic Health Advisory Committee, we are continuing doing quarterly meetings. We added 2 new members of former Dare County Environmental Health Department Supervisor Rob Crawford, as well as Planning Board member Gary Ferguson. We're still working on different DWMP recommendations, increasing outreach education. Discussed a little bit of the new House bills that came in, the SL 2023-90 and 2023-77. Worked on the amendment for the no parking on septic areas, and then just going over DEQ water quality samplings and versus like kind of comparing them with our sampling programs. Continuing working with ECU and CSI, I did just do 2 interviews with North Carolina Health Magazine or News Magazine and Scientific American Magazine. I'm waiting for them to send me the articles when they were done editing them, and I can forward them along then. But as of right now, they have not gotten them back to me. I did my operator class in April, and I will take my test for that in September. So hopefully I'll be able to get that done soon. Just want to say thank you to Commissioner Brinkley. former Mayor Bob Mueller, former Mayor Bob Edwards, Mr. Wayne Verlick, Rob Crawford, Planning Board member Gary Ferguson, and Dave Herman, to just all their help with the committees and everything they've helped us with this program. I think that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you, Connor. We appreciate your passion for this work. I mean, it's pretty clear, and it's really paying dividends, and you know, the people who interact with you know that, you know, this is good work that we're doing.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Board?
Definitely a great representative and steward of the name of this,
Yep.
this operation. I mean,
Thank
thank you for what you do.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Connor. Appreciate that. That brings us to old business and items tabled from previous meetings. And first will be consideration of traffic control map amendments for Roanoke Shores subdivision. Perry? Been a busy man today.
A little bit too much up here for my comfort, Mr. Mayor. Good morning again. I'm here before you today with a request to the town's traffic control map regarding parking on West Lakeside Street. At the June BOC meeting, several residents showed concerns for traffic and parking issues on West Lakeside due to the future hotel. It was requested we go ahead and look at this area for no parking on the entire street, as well as a no-through traffic sign. I went and rode the area again, and after inspection, it would be my recommendation to have parking from the intersections at 158, no parking on the south side because of properties at 111 through 207, Lakeside on the south side. Their driveways are extremely steep, and I don't know how that would affect parking at these properties. There have always been some cars and stuff parking there over the past numerous years, and trailers as well. So I don't know how much room that they would have, and then would this hurt them in some way if we restricted it all the way down by their properties. The north side of the street, going from the intersection to Bob White, the empty lot there that's now that would be the future hotel, this would go all the way past that, and this would be no parking between signs. Based on those observations from looking over there, I've got two options for your consideration. Number one would be the no parking the entire length of the street on both sides of the road, north and south of Lakeside. And then number two would be no parking from the intersection of US 158 to the property line of 111 on the south side. And then for the north side, no parking between signs from US 158 to the intersection of Bob White. We'll also place no through traffic signs on each side of the road, probably about 75 to 80 yards from the intersection there, as a visual aid, being that this is a public street for no through traffic.
Great. Sure.
I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have or any recommendations.
Do you see any problem on the side streets there?
A friend of mine has a house back there. I go over there regularly. I mean, some people park if they have people over. So I don't know if that would consider, if you make those side streets no parking, how that's going to affect residents, because we don't separate when we have enforcement actions and things on a traffic map. I mean, when it's doing no parking, we don't go see if they're residents or not.
That was obvious on Southside Road.
Yes,
So,
correct.
Yeah. Commissioner Brink.
No question, just the no-through traffic is simply a visual aid because
Yes.
it's not enforceable.
No, not at all. It's a public street. If we start telling people they can't be on a public street, we have bigger problems with the town.
When it's just unenforceable,
Yeah,
period.
it's not enforceable.
And then the other thing is, no parking is no parking. It doesn't differentiate
No, sir.
between who can park. and who
We've run into several issues from when we've put no parking areas that people wanted in neighborhoods, and we get called when they get tickets that say that they live here and want to know if we can get rid of them, and we don't get into that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Chief, as it was brought to my attention, there's not a stop sign exiting. Is that something we could add to the requirement?
Exiting where?
The gas station on the lakeside?
We can look at it, but that's private property. There would be, I don't think it would be enforceable. There's stop signs at other areas that have private property. It's just a visual aid as well. And because even though it is coming on a public street, I'd have to look into it more, but stop signs, when they get deemed to go on a traffic map, especially if it's coming off of a private property to a major highway, a US route or NC-12 route, I know that they can be deemed approved for a traffic map to be enforceable. Like there's a stop sign in the northern part of town by the bowling alley. You know, that's not on a traffic map. It's never been there. It's not really a street. It's part of the parking lot, but it's looked at as a roadway, but that's not enforceable. So my first thought's gonna be that's just gonna be a visual aid.
Well, sometimes we need visual aids in this world.
Yep.
Yeah.
What about the concern of when there's flooding? If no parking's no parking, if there's flooding and the residents move their cars to Lakeside, are they going to be towed or ticketed? Or could they call the town and say, hey, we're worried about it flooding, we want to move our cars up there?
I can say in other areas, flooding events, we have things. I talked with our PIO, and then we put out that due to flooding, you can park in certain areas.
Okay.
But then we have run into the problems of the flooding goes down, 24 hours later, cars are still there, and they say that they moved it. So what is the time frame for where we've had people ticketed, 18 to 24 hours a day after a flood event has gone and everything's been cleaned up and people are still parking there, and they use the flooding as an excuse that the town sent out.
So would we need to make a time frame on that or something? So that that doesn't happen in other areas too, not just that area? Because once we put the no parking signs up there, the residents still will want to, because that's going to be problematic. But
I mean, they've parked, in flooding areas, people park everywhere when they move them. We do have common sense that if it is a flood, we're not going to go right there and then and there. Being that a good friend of mine owns a piece of property back there, I've checked on his property on my days off before, and cars are parked in his thing, and I just tell them, man, there's people from the neighborhood that have parked up here in your driveway. So, and they understand that stuff. Small communities work with each other on things like that. It's just, I don't know how, if we did put something in writing to restrict a time frame on it, how do you go about doing it? Because not all areas in the town flood when we have flooding events. So do you single out Soundside Road, Old Street, certain areas that do flood?
So it's just going to need to be discretionary.
Yeah, I think probably so. I mean, if it depends on, and part of the answer to that question, I think, depends on which map we adopt today. If we adopt the recommended map with the shorter stretch, understanding that traffic maps can also be amended at later dates. If we, for now, adopt that shorter version to deal with the immediate concerns about the visual obstructions that we've had and that people have had that have been an ongoing issue, if we adopt that, there is high shoulder along there that would be available for folks from down on the lower end to be able to park, on either side of
The Dominion property right there, that parking lot out there that Dominion has, that usually gets filled up during flooding events from people back in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
If that gets filled up when it floods, though, is there concern that that will be filled up with hotel parking?
It could. I mean,
Yeah.
Dominion would have to put their own signs up, being that that's private property, or enforce the towing or whatnot. I mean, I've parked in that parking lot to go see a friend of mine before. So
If they start having a problem, they're probably going to gate it at the road, more than likely. All right. Thank you. Stay, if you don't mind, stay there while we see what the board's feeling is in terms of perhaps adopting one of these options. Board, any sense of what you want to do with these or a modified version?
You want to talk about it, you want a motion?
Let's
don't
talk.
need
No, I understand that. We can do either. We can do either. If we want to talk about it, go ahead. Or if
I
you
would-
want to make a motion.
I'd make a motion that we take the police chief's recommendation of the no parking between signs, which is option number 2, from the intersection of 158 to the property line at 111 West Lakeside. On the south side of the roadway for the north side, no parking between signs, 158 to the intersection of Bob White.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Okay, now discussion.
The reason for me making that motion, these complaints have been brought to us within the last 60 days or so. Not, I don't recall it going back any further when I was the police chief or since I've been on this board. The immediate concern is, in my opinion, is the convenience store. The trucks parked there, cars exiting. Let the police chief see if he can do a visual aid for a stop sign. Let's put up the no parking signs there, and then you could always add more to it. I just don't, you take it all the way, we've got a representation here today, but I know that there's other residents that use that right away regularly.
Right.
But if it's causing traffic issues, it's our right of way. We need to restrict the parking there.
And I guess we would, in the short term, then preserve shoulder parking in case of flooding, because there would still be space,
And then,
high ground available.
and then add on to it. I mean, if the hotel even comes, you could add on to it.
Right.
Just see if this works, and then we'll hear back. If it doesn't, and you can always add to it. That's just, and again, it was the police chief's recommendation, so.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, it does go back to kind of what you said. We can always amend a map. I mean, I don't think the board has a problem with either one of the maps, but I think the one that's recommended is the easier one to start with, and if it doesn't work, we can always adjust it, and that's not a problem.
It'll be the one that causes less conflict.
Yes, for now, yes.
Because there is a white trailer parked on the north side of that road really consistently, and
I don't know if that thing's moved in the last couple of years.
So I'm kind of wondering where that's going to go. but-
It's got flat spots on the tires, I bet.
Okay. Commissioner?
I have concern with not going I understand the concerns brought up with going all the way back, but I do have concerns with it not going all the way back if that hotel does come into being built there, just because if there's a queue for a left-hand turn or with that shortened third lane, and that queue goes longer than the south side of the no parking, and there's cars parked there, that's gonna be a problem. I'm okay with doing option number 2 today, but I definitely, if that hotel does come to pass, we need to look at this
Oh,
again,
yeah.
because I hate
Of
the idea
course.
of it becoming a problem before we look at it.
No doubt. No doubt. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. We've had discussion. Hearing no further discussion, and that motion is to approve the chief's recommended option with the short leg on the south side, and that's the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. And I was, people in the town of Nags Head are pretty liberal about telling us about their flooding issues, and I had not heard about Old Street. And so since this came up, I've made a habit of turning into Lakeside and driving up and down just so I can experience what it's like to go in and out of there. So I've been in and out of there 20-some times at this point. And I did go down there after it had rained, and the road was flooded, so I took Andy down there. So we are looking at that flooding and seeing if there's anything that we can do down there on Old Street.
Yeah, we also went down there a separate time with David and some of the staff and looked at the flooding right there at the intersection of Old, and I think he's put that on his list, and he's looking at solutions for that at this point. And we also took out that canvas sign.
Thank you very much. That brings us to consideration of a policy for neighborhoods to request traffic calming. David?
Yeah, good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Back in June, staff had gone ahead and presented just a framework for traffic calming measures for recent requests that we had received within several of our west side neighborhoods. And so with that feedback, we went back and we were able to go ahead and develop a policy document. And that is included in your board packet for review. I want to go ahead and highlight some of those things that we cover within this policy document that incorporate some of that feedback that we had previously received. So first and foremost, what is the purpose of this document? And it's to outline a process by which the town of Nags Head will address requests related to transportation safety concerns on town-maintained streets. And this is going to cover all town-maintained streets, with the exception, excuse me, of US Highway 158, South Croatan Highway, and South Virginia Dare Trail, which are maintained by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. So what will this process potentially look like? And also included in your board packet is a flow chart that just kind of summarizes what this process could look like. And I've got this up on the screen for review. So the way that this process would work is that an applicant would submit a request to the town clerk. We have a copy of that application included in your board packet. So from that point, staff would go ahead and review the request and then conduct a traffic assessment. And I'll go over a little bit later some of the details that would be included in that traffic assessment. So failure to meet the criteria listed in the assessment would end the review process, but that doesn't mean nothing would be done. We have a tiered structure, and I'll go over that as well. So there would be some level of recommendation and improvement that could go along with each request. So the next step would be that if it met the warrants, it would then go through a more comprehensive engineering study and review. If it did not meet the warrant, there would be an option for the applicant to go through a neighborhood support option. And basically this option would be that if they gain support of, and we've listed 70% of those within the area of influence for this request, that they could proceed forward as well. So it's not totally data-driven, that there would be two different options that applicants could go ahead and take for this process. And then if it did not receive the support for that neighborhood option, then that would end the process. But again, there is the opportunity for Tier 1 or Tier 2 recommendations to be suggested for that area. Next in the process, I said the staff would go ahead and provide a more comprehensive engineering review with maps, the data collection, as well as defining where the area of influence is, a concept for the proposed traffic calming measure, as well as an estimated cost for that. So from there, that would be presented to the applicant, and then they would proceed with a neighborhood meeting to go ahead and present the findings of that report, as well as try to establish or document support for each one of those requests. And then from there, it could proceed forward to the Town Board of Commissioners in order to go ahead and consider that request and identify any funding that is needed for that. And failure to achieve either one of those could potentially end the review process, but still there are opportunities for recommendations to be made. So going back to the policy document, we've covered the purpose, the applicability, and the procedure. So as far as the traffic assessment goes, what we would do is that we would go ahead and put the radar trailer out there for no fewer than 2 weeks, up to a 30-day period to go ahead and collect speed data. And we would look at things such as speed, volume, length of the road for consideration, any of the street grades, are there any accidents that have occurred over the past 3 years, are there existing pathways, and are there other extenuating factors that could be considered as part of this request. I just want to go ahead and cover one thing, and that is speed. And typically when we look at speed for applications, we're looking at the 85th percentile speed. And basically what that speed is the speed of 85% of the traffic that is at or below that speed which has been measured there for a free-flowing traffic condition. And so we would use that as basically our threshold for speed. And what we have defined here as that 85th percentile speed is the posted speed limit that's 6 miles per hour past that we would evaluate that so it would be either greater to or equal than 6 miles per hour over that 85th percentile speed. We'd also look at volume. We've established 200 vehicles per day, and street length. We're looking at a maximum of 1 mile in length and 300 feet in length. And that is really based upon review of the streets that we have within the town to ensure that all of our town streets would qualify. And so we looked at some of our longer streets, such as Soundside Road, to ensure that that would qualify. And then look at some of the shorter segments, such as cul-de-sacs. Typically they're about 300 feet in length, but we want to have a minimum criteria as well, so that has been established. So from there, once we look at all the data related to the request, that we would move forward with the traffic engineering study, and as stated previously, we would go ahead and compile that traffic volume, look at the speed data, look at the accident information, and then prepare maps, concepts, construction estimates, and then we would go ahead and do an internal review with staff to include the town manager, the police chief, the fire chief, public services director, as well as the town engineer, to go ahead and finalize the findings of that document before it is presented to the neighborhood. Now, as far as the framework for the tiered structure that we have for the mitigative measures is that we've broken this into 3 different tiers. The first tier is the non-physical type of traffic calming measures, which are low cost and low impact. I've got those up here on the screen, and typically those are things that can be done either through increased enforcement, through the police department, through a neighborhood awareness campaign, temporary installation of a radar trailer, or maintenance of landscaping in order to go ahead and improve sight distance. So these are just low cost, low impact measures that can be taken. Provided a little bit of information regarding the neighborhood awareness campaign to talk about how you can have neighborhood meetings to discuss these issues. That you can have a block party, there's door hangers that you can use in order to go ahead and get the word out, because really these people live in these neighborhoods, they see it firsthand, and it's an effort to go ahead and really manage it right there at its source. Secondly is the Tier 2 traffic calming measures, which are moderate cost and low impact, which could include signage or advance warning. There could be a change or additional pavement markings, including crosswalks. There could be some turn prohibitions, colored pavements, and there could also include the temporary installation of a radar speed display device, which we have implemented in several of our West Side neighborhoods. And then Lastly, the Tier 3 are the high-cost, high-impact traffic calming measures. And those would typically consist of the permanent installation of the radar speed display device. It could be speed cushions, planted medians, chicanes, or mini traffic circles. And there would be other measures that we could consider, but those are a listing of what we anticipate would be those that would probably rise to the level of a neighborhood request. And then lastly, funding. We go ahead and cover the funding for these traffic calming measures. Currently, the town does not have a specified funding source for traffic calming measures, and so we could look at what we have as far as available funding for Tier 1 and Tier 2, but the Tier 3, which are the higher cost, the higher impact, those would be implemented as funds become available. That could either be part of the CIP process, or that could be considered separate and apart from CIP, and the board could also consider the level of funding on a case-by-case basis for each one of these requests. That it could be little to no cost share, or if the board deems so, it could be 100% private cost share for these types of devices, just depending on the type of request. And then lastly, within the policy document, we talk about implementation once that's been approved by the board, and then also cover multi-way stops and traffic signals, how those are typically managed, and then the approved signs and what we use as a point of reference, which is the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is the industry standard for implementation of not only traffic calming measures, but as well as signage. So that is a brief overview of both the policy and just the procedures for these types of requests, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
You or the manager or the chief may need to answer this. We have put some of the fixed signs that indicate the driver's speed in some locations, maybe in the cove. Have we seen reduced complaints and improved compliance where we have put those signs?
We have evaluated that data. So we've got over in Old Nags Head Cove, over on Soundside Road, and over in Whalebone Junction. Each is a little bit different as far as the traffic volumes and the surrounding properties. And it's hard to go ahead and compare the pre-implementation to post-implementation. I would say that Soundside Road probably has the largest success because of the duality of the speed limit signs as well as the speed cushions. That right now, the 85th percentile is about 22 miles per hour. We looked at over in the Cove, and we looked over several time periods. We looked at July, we looked at April, we looked at this year, we looked at last year. There really is very little difference from month to month or from year to year as far as the 85th percentile. And they are typically right around 6 miles per hour over the speed limit. And that's the data that we use to go ahead and drive this process, is that we try to take that existing data collection and say, okay, can this be achievable? And from what we see, it can be achievable in some of these neighborhoods.
Thank you. I think I'll start down here with Mr. Lambert. Any questions?
No questions. I'm looking forward to us. I think that there's a huge need for this, and we've had lots of neighborhoods ask about this, so I'd love to see a formal process.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Sears.
Agree with Commissioner Lambert. and I appreciate your work on this and other things. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
David, thank you for your work on this. I know it's very detailed, and I think we do need a plan. Just the only question I've got is on page 2, paragraph 3, where it talked about that you conduct a neighborhood meeting to review the concept plan for the proposed enhancements, inform other residents about the use of traffic calming devices, and document additional input. I would just like to suggest that we have I understand the need to gauge community support. I get that. But instead of having to call a formalized meeting, could an alternative be do an online poll, emails supporting, that way the town could document?
Yes, and I think that we would view that, so if there was an online meeting, just some documentation that there was some community outreach.
Correct.
And so, yes, I think when we look at this, we would look at many different forms as to how these meetings could be conducted.
Thank you. And the other thing is I would like to see, as funds permit, that the radar signs, the board signs that we have in the cove and on Soundside Road, that they be added to other neighborhoods as well. Just listening to what you see and how the compliance has been, and it's just another visual aid to show somebody, hey, there's a speed limit. That's the speed limit. That's how fast I'm going. I need to slow down. I would like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I really like this, and I appreciate your work on it. My only concern is we've gotten a couple emails, and I've gotten a couple complaints about stop signs back in neighborhoods that people are blowing through or not stopping for. I guess there's not any way to really monitor or address that situation. I know you put them in there for traffic calming devices, but a lot of people are kind of ignoring them. And I think, Chief, weren't you called the one recently, so?
Yes, sir. We've been in that neighborhood, and several citations have been written to people that live back there, and some of their answers didn't really pay attention to it. So, I think with what he has there, we're usually the last resort that people want us in the neighborhoods. They like to see us riding around and stuff, but they don't like to see us there with the enforcement stuff. But we have written several tickets in that neighborhood that you're speaking of for the stop signs.
Okay.
And we do routine patrols in all of our neighborhoods. Our guys and girls love getting out with people in the neighborhoods, seeing the kids and stuff. And it's not our favorite part of our job to write tickets and stuff, but we do our fair share of it. I was looking at our year-end numbers, but I think y'all got this in this packet here, that our citations and warnings were up drastically. So it's not fun gaining compliance by enforcement, but some people have to learn that way.
Thank you.
I know a lot of the neighborhoods that we do get complaints, the complainant is usually one of the first ones that we stop. Speeding or stop signs in those neighborhoods.
No doubt.
They tell us that they're the ones who call.
Yep. Yep. Good.
That's
All right. I'll just say for my part, I agree with Commissioner Brinkley. I think if they work and we can be more liberal with the signs to indicate driver speed, move those up in the sort of priority of action.
Well, can we clarify that? Because, I mean, based on the way you've written this policy, those radar signs would be considered a Tier 3 measure.
Right, so it could either be a Tier 2 or a Tier 3. If you just had temporary installation of one of those signs, that would be a Tier 2. If you had permanent installation of one of those signs, it would be a Tier 3.
And the Tier 3, based on the policy, the Tier 3 requires,
Yes.
the neighborhood support or the engineering study.
Well, what I was going to suggest, since Tier 2 is really the first place where you actually do anything other than the education campaign, Tier 1 is really an education campaign. My first thought was if I was staying within the framework, was to move it into Tier 2 and just say the first time you decide there's something you need to do in that neighborhood that is structural, go ahead and put the signs out. But I heard from Commissioner Brinkley, it's almost aside from this in terms of, we have it in there as a Tier 3 item, does the board have any objection to us moving it into just maybe general practice, I guess is what it is, as funds are available, or we go ahead and budget for them to go, so that we go ahead and blanket every neighborhood with those main streets where we identify problems, and just go ahead and get those signs out there and not leave it for a tier 3 action. That's essentially what I.
It's just an added aid.
Well, I mean, I guess that's what, part of the purpose of the policy was to define when we would apply those things. And so, you know, if we're gonna sort of separate those out and say, okay, if we get a request from a neighborhood to add one of those signs, we're going to do it. No questions asked. That's different than this.
It is, and I think that's what I'm hearing, is that rather than leave it for tier 3, when we first get indication of a problem, we go and put them out. My preference at this point, if they work, is just go ahead, budget for them, decide which streets we want them on, and let's just go ahead and do it, whether we've got, you know, whether we've got residents complaining or not. I mean, those neighborhoods where, you know, we've probably had some complaints, I mean, we probably know where they are.
I just can't imagine a resident complaining that the town put a small board that displays their speed, that they would complain that that was done. I mean, look what we did over on Soundside Road. My gosh.
I mean, I don't think that a neighbor will necessarily complain about it, I'm not sure, but, you know, I guess that criteria was defined, and so if that's the direction we want to go, we probably need to look at what's written here and sort of tweak it a little bit. I mean, we could add it to the tier 2, or we could, I don't know if it would require any further adjustment beyond that, or.
Yeah, we could go ahead and strike it from tier 2, and then with what we have written, strike it from tier 3, and what we have written in tier 2, just say permanent installation in lieu of temporary.
For the purpose of this policy, I'm okay with that, to go ahead and move it up. I think when we get to our budget discussion, maybe, we should talk about, you know, policy or not, we should talk about whether we're a little more liberal about going ahead and rolling out those signs.
Just remind us real quick, what does it take for a tier 2 measure?
What does it take? So a tier 1 or a tier 2 can be done outside of the formal application process. So we tried to give that flexibility, and I guess that's what I'm hearing from the board, is in lieu of having to go through all this, there's another option of a tier 1 or a tier 2 that somebody can request that we could go ahead and honor.
I would say go ahead and move it up at least to tier 2, and then let's continue to discuss whether we eventually get them out there and we take them out of the tiers at all, because all the neighborhoods already have them at some point soon.
How do we limit though, if we have a neighborhood where every street, like, do we say we can only have one in one neighborhood?
Well,
I just feel like there has to be some sort of
you're
a
right.
box
There does
around
have
this.
to be some identification of where they need to go. So, yeah.
But I think each neighborhood, I won't say each, quite a few of our neighborhoods have all experienced some sense of people traveling in excess of the speed limit. I mean, I think a couple on Wrightsville Memorial would be good. It's 25. Look, people shoot down those streets quite a bit. You know, and then if people complain, Lakeside, if they would like one, you could put one. South Nags Head, I don't think it's very difficult to be able to do it.
I think there's definitely a need for it, and I want to be liberal with it. I see it, the plain devil's advocate looking at the problem. What happens when Soundside and someone right around the corner says, I want one here too? Do we have to have a process to say yes or no to too many, or we could have 3? And how do we say no to 3 in one neighborhood if they want it?
I think you,
We won't have
Deering
that
Street,
problem.
put one on the east side, one on the west side. You got the neighborhood covered. That's just my opinion. I look at it too simple, but I just appreciate the board considering it, and again, thank David for his work on the policy.
I mean, you know, the other, like you said, at budget time, you know, the other option would be to sort of evaluate townwide locations that we think these things would be better suited. You know, obviously, you know, like David said, we're not gonna stick these radar signs at every short street segment throughout the town.
Right.
But there are major, not necessarily collector streets, but like Deering Street's a good example.
Yeah.
Like Windjammer's a good example. You know, Bridge Lane,
Right.
you know, we already have a request for that.
Right.
We know there's areas where you've got longer street segments where there's more potential for speeding.
Right.
And so we could sort of do an evaluation and identify those locations.
Let's
and
do that.
maybe program that in the budget
Right.
and sort of pull that out.
Yeah, okay, I'm good.
Make a recommendation on that.
Yeah, I think that's good, and then we can go ahead and get some
That
of
way
them
it's
out,
not as
and then-
totally uncontrolled.
Yeah, right, yep. And then I think in terms of this, I do think for other streets,
Yeah.
move it up to tier 2. That at least requires the discussion and the evaluation and some degree of community involvement before you
Yeah,
decide
just
where they have to
so
go.
You have an idea.
Okay, thank you, David.
All right, thank you.
All right, that brings us to committee reports, and I'll start down on this end with Commissioner Lambert.
Yeah. The Government Education Access Channel Committee did meet on the 24th. Our LPDI grant application was submitted and approved. We haven't met since April, so we went over the videos produced since then. There's 34, I believe, and those also include the Nags Head Beach Flag video, the part 2 of Jockey's Ridge, and the Meet the Mayor video that I mentioned before. Another interesting discussion item that we've been talking about at our committee is the possibility of doing a film festival for the Outer Banks. And I think that's really exciting, and it's definitely needs to be fleshed out more, but I'm really excited about the future possibility of that.
Very good.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Nothing to report this month, sir.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Brand?
Nothing from Jeanette's Pier, and we had the update about the Septic Health Advisory Committee.
Yep, very good. Commissioner Sanders?
Just want to thank the town on all the work that they did on the grant program, and especially the one for the Esterland Shoreline Committee. Very excited about that, so thank you, guys.
That was a huge win.
Yeah,
And it's really great work, great work. Thank you very much. That brings us to consideration of resolutions for the fall 2024 fishing tournaments for the Nags Head Surf Fishing Club, the Fraternal Order of Eagles, and the Outer Banks Association of Realtors. Do we normally take these one at a time, or can we adopt all of these together?
Yeah,
I think we could do it
always done
together.
Together.
To do it together, in that case, a motion to authorize fall 2024 fishing tournaments for Nags Head Surf Fishing Club, Fraternal Order of Eagles, and the Outer Banks Association of Realtors. I make that as a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you very much. That brings us to consideration of an ordinance to regulate certain fishing practices to attract sharks. Chief?
5 times the charm, Mr. Mayor.
We had an episode that happened earlier this summer, and sort of precipitated this coming before you. And I think it would be more interesting to hear Chief Hale tell it than me, so.
All right, Chief.
I've cut some of that out, boss. Good morning again, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here before you today with a request to update our town's code of ordinances under Chapter 8, which covers beaches and waterways. Recently, we've had several calls to our department and to the town for people fishing on the shoreline, specifically targeting sharks. The latest came during the week of July 4th, where several individuals were using drones to fly fish out and drop in the water to attract the sharks for their fishing. And it caused several beachgoers concerns with a little bit of a confrontation, argument back and forth to where it's their right to fish, but in my mind, it just doesn't make good sense to do that type of fishing when our beaches and waterways are at capacity. We're not looking to ban this type of fishing, just put a restriction on it during our busiest time of the year. And it obviously raises a major safety concern for our lifeguards and our visitors to our area that come here for our beaches. The ordinance drafted would restrict fishing for sharks or targeting this species during our busiest times from May 1st through October 31st with a time frame of 9 in the morning to 5 p.m. I looked at other areas and followed some language from Pine Knoll Shoals that recently enacted a ban, I believe it was last year or a year and a half ago, after several shark incidents that they had with some of their beachgoers. And this would not ban this type of fishing, but restrict it that if people still wanted to do it, they could do it before our beaches get packed in the morning, which is usually around 10 o'clock when the lifeguards are definitely in the stands. I know our school resource officer, he is on the beach by 10 in the morning. So there are some people out there before that time, but our main capacity is 10 a.m. to about 5 p.m. It starts thinning out around 4 o'clock in the afternoon when people going home to get showers, go out to the restaurants, etc. So this would limit that fishing to be restricted during 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. from May 1st to October 31st. And if approved, would request that the ordinance be listed per Chapter 1 of Section 1-6 that governs the general penalty and enforcement of the town ordinances to be the misdemeanor or a civil violation under Chapter 8 regulations. I'll be happy to answer any questions or concerns or hear other options.
Right. Commissioners, Commissioner Sanders?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Franklin? Okay. Nope. Okay.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your work on that. That brings us to items referred to in presentations from the town attorney. Mr. Leidy, do you have anything besides our closed sessions?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to items and presentations from our town manager. We are almost spot on in terms of time. First being time specific for 11. Andy, do you want to try to cover anything before that? Because I probably don't have time before 11.
We could try to cover the kites item.
Okay.
Would be
Yep,
very
let's
quick.
do that. Very good.
You know, the board discussed the issue of kites last month, a concern about kites being flown too high and interfering with air traffic, and there were certain FAA regulations that restrict kite flying. The board had asked me to reach out to the county manager to determine whether or not this had been an issue from the Dare Med flight or from the county EMS department. I did speak with the county manager, and he spoke with their EMS director, Jenny Collins. And they said that this has not really been an issue for them, primarily because of the elevation at which they're flying. They're usually flying a minimum of 500, but more routinely 1,000 or 1,500 feet. And they're also not necessarily flying along the ocean front. It's not their normal flight path, and so this just has not been an issue for them. And so the county manager wasn't interested in pursuing anything from his perspective. Now, you know, I talked to our PIO, Roberta Thuman, about this, and we have discussed doing some social media, you know, sort of expressing our concerns and guidance on this issue. So it's something that we can do and we plan to do. But beyond that, I'll stand for questions or any direction from the board on this.
All right, thank you. You had spoken with Kitty Hawk Kites, who is a big vendor of kites in the area, and you did get some response from them.
Yes, I spoke to John Harris, and they published something they hand out to people who buy some of these higher-end kites in terms of do's and don'ts. Okay. And I noticed it did not have you know, anything on the height of kite or how much string that you should let out. So it may be something I could follow up with him and suggest, could you try and add that back in? Okay. He said that they normally use about 300 feet of string on every standard kite. So I think in most cases, people are tying multiple strings together to do this.
Yeah, just see how high I can get it.
Right.
So, do you think that addresses the concern?
Not according to the other two people. I don't know why the MedFlight pilot would complain with an email to the town when it hasn't been an issue, but I'm gonna let Larry and Jenny Hawk know to pursue their request for something through the county.
Right. Okay.
And I think they need to hear it, and because, again, I was not interested in just doing Nags Ed. Sure. I've got 2 texts in the last, I just looked, 5 days, and one was Oregon Inlet, the other one was Kitty Hawk, and they were both at 400 feet. So I think it just let the county, if they want to address something, but that kind of.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, thank you, Andy. Are our consultants ready?
Try and bring up the Zoom here real quick. There we go. They were going to be here in person today, but they were concerned about traveling during the weather, so we're doing this via Zoom, so.
Yep.
Tim, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you quite well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, give us just a minute or two for folks to, I think folks are taking a restroom break.
Sure, no problem at all. No problem at all.
Actually, I think we should have just recessed. Everybody's gone. So Tim, give us 5 minutes here. We're going to recess for 5 minutes, and we'll be back to you. Appreciate the Oakley Collier folks giving us a minute there. And Tim, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity, we all do, not only to be with you this morning, but also allowing us to do it virtually or Zooming. Yeah, I wish the weather people were a little more reliable in predictions than they are, but albeit we appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Andy, do you want me to pull up the presentation from our end?
Yeah, that might be better to allow you to control it.
Okay, all right. So Amanda, can you do that, please? Yeah, the good old struggles with technology. There we go. Great. Again, thank you for the opportunity this morning. We wanted to come together and go over where we are with the study, discuss some of our findings and recommendations, and certainly take input from the board so that we can make this as specific as possible for the town of Nags Head, and make sure everybody has the opportunity to voice their opinion and share their thoughts. Next slide, Amanda. With us this morning is the three musketeers, Ann Collier, Amanda Ryder, and myself will be sharing with you our thoughts on this. You know, we start with, you know, what was our mission? What was our objectives of the study? And studies are always interesting that you start out with one direction and things reveal themselves as you go, and you start tacking in an opposite direction. But overall, we were looking at the town's facilities and determine a 20-year needs analysis and see how the facilities are holding up in terms of usability and functionality for the town, and then create a master plan, if you will, or a roadmap of how you might determine or satisfy the needs in the future, and then ultimately create a high-level cost estimate for what those needs may be. And to that point, you know, some of these needs will not be addressed for a number of years, and so our next step is, after today, is to go back and create those estimates for the projects that we're going to show you. If you would, please interrupt us, talk to us, ask questions as we go along. I'll get going too fast in a minute and probably slide right by something, so please just interrupt if need be. But our overall approach for the study was the 4 steps that you see on the screen. You know, what do we have? What do we need? What should we do? And how should we do it? And under each one of those headings gives you the brief synopsis of what was involved in those steps. As you all have been involved in the meetings that we've had and conversations, as well as staff, and all that information is of utmost importance to help us understand how the town of Nags Head functions. And
Is this on our end or their end?
Hold on just one second, Tim. The volume has dropped here.
Okay.
There you go.
It was
It's
back.
back now.
Okay, so, you know, we all have a stake in this, not only town and the staff and the board, but we as designers trying to make sure we shake everything out to give you the best results possible. You can go, yeah. One of the steps is just to look at Nags Head and what has been your projection, your trajectory over the years. You know, those snapshots of information information that Amanda had gathered from public records from the budget office. But the interesting part is if you look at the growth, it really started skyrocketing, for lack of a better word, about the same time COVID shows up. Now, public records for the information that we found more or less stopped at 2023, and so we made some calculation of that same projection out to 2026 to see what the population may be. You could do the same assumption for another 10 years, and it would add about 500 people, but we felt like we may be getting out in front of our skis at that point, and so we felt safe with obviously the numbers that the state had generated, and then some reasonable projection for the next couple of years in terms of population growth. And at some point, you know, it gets to be, you can't house but so many people within the confines of the town limits. And my understanding is, you know, most of Nags Head is single-family motels, some hotels, but all low-story structures. So I'm pretty confident in saying there's no more land to be had for Nags Head. But the next redevelopment would be how you create additional living spaces for the town. We didn't really touch on that, but so we're looking at population growth getting up around 3,400 citizens in the next few years. We also, as we look at the buildings that we're talking about, we try to come up with where are they in their life cycle. And historically, based on some federal guidelines, we use a 50-year life cycle for structures. And most of your buildings on average are 39 and a half years. But we also look at the government issues additional factors for where you are. You're considered in a harsh environment with being along the coast, and that results in a shortened life expectancy. So when you dial that in, it puts you about 37.5 years as the average life expectancy for the structures. And you can see on the chart, the green line is the 37 and a half years, red line is the 39.5 of the average age. So you can see the municipal building is certainly well within its life expectancy, and the others are approaching or exceeded what would be the average. Now we kind of get into where are we? What are some of the things that we have witnessed or experienced or talked about in dealing with the different aspects of the town? You know, one of the pressing issues, or will become a pressing issue in the next few years, is the septic system that's on the town campus. It's an aging system. You have a limited repair area. The repair area is basically around the existing town hall. And so there's not very much opportunity to expand it, but that is something that will need to be addressed in the coming years, is how to improve the septic system or replace the system going forward. The other is the exercise or fitness facility that's on the campus. As you all know, it has mold and it's not usable. It's not a healthy building. And you're currently operating the fitness programs over in the bank property across the street that the village owns, town owns. And we understand that that is to possibly come to an end in the fall of 2025, or the use of that facility. The other is just general meeting space for the town, and how those spaces are currently located within the police department or the fire department and the boardroom. Some are less ideal than others, but that's one of the areas that we will address in the study. And again, just some of the layouts and usable spaces within the individual departments and some of the needs that we saw there. And I'd probably be remiss to say, if Ann or Amanda, you can jump in anywhere along the way. Again, some of the bullet points of some of the challenges that we saw was obviously the limited expansion ability of the spaces that you have. The town hall is a building that's hard to expand, and given the surrounding property and how you would accomplish that. Some of the interior finishes, we heard a lot of conversations about daylight and the need for daylight within the spaces. I think everybody appreciates a well-lit workplace that just is a healthier building. There are some HVAC issues that are over in the fire department space, that are trying to be dealt with. And of course, in the police department, the ventilation for the evidence storage, how shall we say, is less than ideal. You get to smell the contents of the evidence room, I guess. There's also some access control issues as it relates to the police department and the coming and going of officers and/or possible suspects interacting with either staff or visitors to the town hall, and a general lack of adequate storage space for the building. So what do we do? We've kind of created a menu, if you will, of the steps we think the town should follow. And first would be, all this becomes kind of like dominoes. Some of this has to take place first before other things can happen. The first is replacement of the fitness center would be the first priority, and we'll talk more about that in the following slides. Followed by the fire department, police, and the public meeting spaces and staff training spaces. The images that we're showing you are just suggestive images of other facilities. So what do we do? Here's our 6 steps. Words are really easy. The execution becomes really difficult. We'd first propose we demolish the old fitness room, the one that's molded, and build a new fitness center on site on the campus of the town hall with additional parking. We'd evaluate, I can't say it, and make improvements to the septic system, build a new fire station on a new site, demolish the existing fire station, build a new police department on that site, relocate existing police out of the municipal building, renovate the first floor in the town hall for the new meeting spaces. That would include a new commissioner's meeting space, and additional staff training and conference spaces, and then relocate public services garage to the former police sally port, demolish the public service garage and impound yard for additional on-site parking on the main campus. That would go to the next one, please. You keep going. So how that starts to take shape is that first item: demolish the old gym and construct the new fitness on lot one being the main campus. You see the little green building, this rectangular shape, would be the new fitness center. We would locate that so that the dashed area, the rectangular space, would become a temporary impound yard for the police station. And then the adjacent building, the existing public works building, would remain in place while these various steps take place. And then we'd create a parking lot that would service the exercise building, but also serve as a driveway access to the public works and to the impound yard. The lot number 2, which is your existing beach parking lot, would just still remain as beach parking. The existing board room would be removed in the future, and that space could be further developed as parking. And then the step 3, or across the street, would be remove the fire station and create a new police station on that site. Then move their impound yard to their building, and then create the necessary parking that's required for the police station. And then the bank site, I understand that will be sold to Dare County for a future EMS station. Next slide, please. These images that we're sharing with you, these are conceptual. These are not meant to be your final solution. They're food for thought, if you will. The fitness building would be basically a 3,200 square foot space. And it would be set up to house not only your existing exercise equipment, but any potential new equipment that you would have or want to incorporate. We would see the building with 2 separate usable spaces within the building, so that you could have different groups of people, whether they be town staff and lifeguard community or whomever. You could house 2 different groups simultaneously, and they don't necessarily have to all be in the same space. The building would afford it the opportunity to have independent showers for folks who want to go in and work out prior to work, and then some storage as different things and activities, whether it be aerobics or whatever, somewhere to store the miscellaneous exercise equipment, and some locker space for the building. Again, it's about 3,200 square feet. We developed a program that will be in the final study. You'll see the listing of spaces and the definition of size for each one of those. And you can see in the lower right-hand corner this relationship to the site and where we place things. Next slide, please. The police department, currently you've got about 9,400 square feet. I may be getting ahead of myself, but in your current police station, you got about 9,400 square feet. There are some shortcomings in some of the functional areas of the police station. This concept plan addresses how in a modern day police station the activities take place, not only in separation of the public from the staff, and the different colors indicate a different level of security. So it's all access control throughout the building. This will also afford them training. In our conversations with the police department, they do quite a lot of training. They also do some other agencies, they come in and share and have shared training courses. So
And Tim,
Go
they
ahead.
also provide space for some outside agencies, and right now, they have someone assigned from a state agency that there's no space for.
So this plan, the 13,000 plus square feet, we think would satisfy the needs of the police station for the foreseeable future. Next, please. The town hall, you know, this was one of those situations that, as I mentioned in the beginning, when you start a study, you go, oh, wait a minute, something needs to happen here. Repurposing the ground floor once the police station moves out really does create a more efficient use for the town in terms of staff and board, in that you're all located under one roof and have access to all the necessary documentation and individuals that you need to on any given meeting. But it also would create the opportunity to have some auxiliary meeting spaces, whether they be used internally or external. This again, conceptually, we've showing you some different setups of meeting spaces, closed session room, break kitchen type space, and toilets. So it really does lend itself quite well to repurposing for the board's use, as well as serve as additional meeting and possible future growth space within town hall should the need arise. And then the fire station, I think is currently like 13,500 square feet or so. The new modern day fire station, you know, the interesting part about fire station design in the today's world, the apparatus bays are pretty much just as they are. I mean, those bays are kind of the same size they've always been, but the conditions within the fire station and the hazardous side of firefighting with decontamination, the need for living space that more emulates a comfortable living environment. And then you've got the other function of the administration of the fire department. So you've really got three different elements happening within this building. And then you've got the training aspect that takes place as well. So the buildings have become, over the years, far more complicated than they used to be. So in looking at the needs for the fire, again, we developed the program that says it's 17,500 square feet and has all the appropriate spaces for what we would say is a modern day fire station and living space. But it also meets all the criteria for operation as a EOC during your storm events, and would serve the needs for the town for the next 50 years. We did, and this one is hypothetical, that a new site somewhere that would generate the proper movement of vehicles and trucks on site and staff and make everything work. We did look at, go to the next slide, please, how could we do this possibly with the existing fire station? And as I like to say, anything is possible. It's all a function of money. And so when we started looking at how would we make the existing station function as a modern day station and meet the needs, it becomes a really complicated project that we would end up demolishing a good portion of what is now the existing sleeping administration area, and as well as across the other side of the bay, the training room, and create a two-story structure to create all the spaces that are needed, and then flip the admin side back to the other side of the building. Long story short, the thing that we salvaged were the 4 bays, which those bays are basically 78 feet long and 80 feet wide, that's pretty good for a fire station. So in the end, it's like, okay, we've exceeded what it would cost to build a new station, we think. Not to mention, we would put this station out of service for a period of time, which would be approaching 1.5 to 2 years. So we didn't feel like that would be the best recommendation for the town, and that's why we're showing you that proposed new freestanding site for the station. Next slide, please. Questions? I've done a lot of talking, and please ask us anything you'd like to know, and we will try to figure it out.
One thing real quick, Tim. So we have the presentation here as well, and the board has a copy of it. And I just want to sort of talk a little bit about what these schematics represent. You know, these certainly aren't final designs. You know, they're conceptual in nature, and we haven't really given our staff a time to throw darts at these. And I think that's probably something we'd want to do. And I know, again, they're not final designs, but we probably want to at least have them take a look at them and make sure that, you know, we get close enough to what would be a realistic scenario. And, you know, that's a step we still need to take into consideration. But, you know, right now we're just trying to program everything out and make sure we've got the space required for each item we need, and also the site area for that. So just wanted to clarify that as well.
And thank you. And we will send you the study that actually has the program information, that just the listing of all the various spaces and sizes. And so that helps everybody understand. We create the concept plans because sometimes looking at the graphic is a little easier than reading just the general program. But I agree with everything you said, Andy.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I was speaking to some of the commissioners about this, and about the first floor of Town Hall. You know, initially we had talked about possibly having the fitness facility eventually be down there. And now we've shifted gears a little bit, and we're showing the fitness facility in a separate building, and the downstairs being the boardroom, the primary boardroom, and also some auxiliary spaces we could use for meetings. We do have restrooms downstairs with locker rooms and showers currently in the building. Commissioner Brinkley mentioned to me that could we preserve those and then also possibly have some space during a storm where the administrative staff at Town Hall could stay as part of our EOC. And so that's another idea that's kind of popped up that I think has some merit. So, you know, we could certainly play around with what's down there in the training room and on the east side of the building right now.
Absolutely. And I think we may have a sketch plan that we had looked at that as well in terms of having the fitness in that side of the building.
I think sometimes there's risk in hardline drawings, you know, before we had computers, Tim and Ann, you know, when the drawings were fuzzy, they were clearly tentative, and sometimes when you present them in hardline, there's the risk that, you know, folks assume that more work has been done in terms of resolving questions than actually has been done, and so we need to be aware that these are very preliminary, and to me, the value of this exercise and the thought process that we've been through is the sequence of events. It's not the plans themselves. You know, if we decide to sell the bank property to the county, then we execute that agreement, then we have to do something about a fitness center. That's a valuable asset to the town at this point, to our staff, and fosters some of our goals for health and wellness. So we need to do that. When when that happens, that's going to happen sooner rather than later. So it sort of forces you into a new building instead of, because you haven't freed up space to renovate yet. And you've got to do something with that facility. And then, the next big decision is really what happens to the fire station, because whether that land is available then for a police station or other function, sort of guides that next step in terms of the process. And it's not until that point that you potentially start freeing up space for renovation. And so, it really continues. I think it has for me to put the point on thinking about what our options are for the fire station. That is to renovate in some fashion that's really that and move it are really the only options, is to renovate it where it is, or to move it somewhere else. That's all.
And Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you saying that, because you're exactly right about the conceptual plans and the perception of these look like they're could be final. They're not. It's the world we live in now. We sketch electronically, so that there's nothing more than, that's our modern day sketch of food for thought.
Well, it looks like the board probably needs to chew on this and give this further thought, and maybe some of our decisions need to be made on related issues before we really generate a lot of questions about this.
Okay. Well, we stand by. We will forward you the verbiage, the study. Again, this is all still a work in progress. And we appreciate the opportunity to discuss it and continue working with you and working towards a solution.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is an update on the Public Services Center. And we appreciate your work on that. Anything that y'all would like to say to that before we call David up?
I think it's moving along pretty well. They're from what I understand, the fleet maintenance component, they're pushing to try to get that buttoned up so we can turn it over. We still have another big domino to fall, which is get that operational so that we can demolish the existing fleet maintenance and do the rest of the site work. It's coming along well. It's a complicated project. It's got a lot of moving parts, and Lord willing, the contractor will keep pushing it and get these things taken care of. But I think my understanding is fleet maintenance, they're pushing to try to get it turned over sometime this month. Now, David may have some other information, but that was my latest information.
Okay, great. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Amanda. We appreciate your presentation and your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
That brings us to an update on construction of public services facility. David?
All right. Good morning again. All right, so this is the same map that we've been using for the entirety of the project. We've got some new colors on the map to represent those buildings that have been occupied and completed. And that would be the administration building, which is here on the right-hand side of the page, and up here towards the top left is the water distribution. So they've been occupied for a month and several months. Now the focus is on the largest building on the site, which is the combined fleet and facilities maintenance and sanitation building, which is down here in the bottom of the page, and that's shown in green. And the green color represents those buildings that are nearing completion. So I'll just go through some recent photographs. This is where we were last month on the interior. We had the wall being painted, the ceiling grid had been laid, and there was still some finishing work to take place. This is the rear of the site and what this looked like. This is on the south side, or to the rear of the building. The area right here with the gravel, that's the permeable paver parking area, and then this area right here is the drive aisle. And there was ongoing utility work that was occurring last week. This is an internal water main that was being installed at that point in time. This is where we are this month. This is the rear of the building site. You can see we've got the permeable pavers. We've got the concrete drive aisle in place. All the exterior trim is complete, and the garage doors are about 95% complete at this time. This is taken from the Lark Avenue side, looking back into the site. You can see, again, we're starting to see some finishing touches on the exterior of the building and also the site work. This is the new driveway entrance from Lark Avenue into the site. This is the perspective of in the site and looking out towards Lark Avenue. One thing that you'll note is that we were able to save these live oaks here along the entrance, and been able to go ahead and preserve a lot of that existing vegetation and really create a nice entranceway here at this location. On the interior of the building, the floors have gone in, the doors have been hung. You can see this is looking down the hallway where the lockers are. And yesterday we had the arrival of the furniture. So this is one of the offices up front where the furniture has been placed. And within the bays, there's still some work to be complete. This is on the east side of the site. These are the 4 easternmost bays, which will serve the fleet maintenance side. But you can see all the above utility work. Here's the duct work up top. There's a lot of electrical chaseways in through here, as well as air lines and oil lines as well. And then this is looking in the facilities maintenance bays. This is nearly finished out. You can see we've got the overhead fans in place. The concrete floor has been sealed. A lot of the unit heaters are in place. And so this side is about 98% complete, along with the interior spaces. So I'll talk a little bit about the schedule here once I finish up the individual building progress. Here for the vehicle storage building, which is located here, it's designated in purple in the center of the site. This is where we were last month. Some of the utility work had just begun, and some of the trim work had begun on the exterior of the site. This month, most all of that trim work has been finished out around 3 sides of the site, and we've got additional utility work. Some of the fire suppression system has gone in, some of the unit heaters have been placed, and then the next up will be electrical work for this. And then lastly is the equipment building, which is located here on the left-hand side, and that's designated in green. That this is a picture of where we were last month, and there hasn't really been a whole lot of progress to this building because the focus has been more on the operational buildings for the combined fleet facilities and sanitation building. This is a picture taken from the mezzanine above. This month, they've started to install more of the utilities. You can see the unit heater that is installed up above, and they have also begun running their electrical work. So from the schedule standpoint, the building that is closest towards completion is here, the big building, which is a combined fleet facilities and sanitation building. The initial schedule was to go ahead and look at partial occupation next week, but Mother Nature hasn't really cooperated with us, and really the critical path here for occupying this building is to go ahead and finish out this concrete flat work out front. Even though it's been formed up with the weather this week, it's just the risk of trying to pour that in the wet weather. The other item is the installation of some of the septic components. For this building, we're utilizing or repurposing the existing drain field, which is out front here of the existing Public Works building. And what's still yet to be installed is the gravity line over here across the drive aisle to a new septic tank with a pump package that will be used to go ahead and connect up to that existing drain field. So those two items have delayed that partial occupation. We're probably looking at the following week. It looks like next week we'll have a nice weather window to be able to go ahead and complete a lot of this flat work in here, as well as go ahead and complete the installation of that septic system. And then secondly, the equipment building, right now, that is tracking towards a mid-September completion date. Another item of note is the existing Public Works building, and going ahead and demoing that existing building. Right now, that is on schedule for the first week after Labor Day weekend to go ahead and move forward with the demolition of that building. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have pertaining to the progress of the project.
Commissioners? Commissioner Wood?
Questions?
No, great job.
Commissioner Sears?
Thanks.
Thank you for that, Dave.
Yep. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. We also, don't we have a change order to discuss?
We do. And let me go ahead and bring that up. So the change order is, the amount is for $155,313.26. And what we have done is, when we originally planned the project, we had a $220,000 allowance for a wash system for this facility. And we haven't changed the layout for that facility, but we've changed our approach. And we've canvassed some of our public services staff to see what works best for them. And when it came down to it, we ended up consulting with Oakley Collier and coming up with our own design rather than go with a prefabricated system. We just didn't have a good fit. We were looking to not only service our fleet vehicles, but also our sanitation trucks. And so this proposal actually puts it in the contractor's hands based upon this updated design with this rinse arch. And I've got this shown on the plans. These dimensions are customized to be able to fit our sanitation trucks as well as our fleet vehicles. And this was a better fit rather than go with the prefabricated option. In addition to this, that we also have included is an equipment building to go ahead and locate all of our equipment. So we've got an air compressor that's going to be located in here, along with a pressure washer that can be utilized for this design. So there's going to be several options for our staff to be able to use this. So the rinse arch right now is activated via a push button control panel, and that will be timer operated. So they'll be able to go ahead and go through the rinse arch. They can pull through, and there will also be an option to go ahead and use a pressure washer as well. We'll also have hot water usage, and so it can be utilized in that fashion. And then separately, there's it's labeled as a sanitation bay, but that can be used by either one of our, any one of our fleet vehicles. If they just want to go ahead and pressure wash separately, that it can be conducted in that bay. So in summary, I'm afraid that my battery's going to run out here, is that this is going to result in cost savings. We estimate about $30,000 from what we had allocated. And because it's customized, I think it's going to better serve our needs. And so the request is to approve the change order in the amount of $155,000, 313 and 26 cents.
All right. Any questions for David? Questions for David? No?
It's, all right, Amy, so this falls under the project ordinance? Okay. Give me a second here. Okay,
There's
so.
two capital project ordinances.
I see,
Change
I
order.
see.
Right, there's one for the capital project ordinance, and then there is a second one. Well, yes, one for the water fund, one for the general fund.
Okay. All right.
So I guess there's going to be three motions, one to approve the change order, and then one to approve
Each of the budget amendment, each of the ordinances. Okay.
Make a motion that we approve the change order as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. And then the capital project ordinance.
Make a motion we approve as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the capital project ordinance. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. And then that brings us to the water ordinance.
Make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the water capital project ordinance. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Then that brings us to the Board of Commissioners agenda, and I will start with Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to discuss today our parking standards within the town, specifically hotel parking. I have a growing concern, we've talked about it before, that our parking requirements versus our parking needs, that there's a discrepancy right now when it comes to hotels, and I'm hoping that we can have a discussion about that. And if the board's amenable, asking town staff to review as well, and/or discussing it with the planning board afterwards. I know that I think that there's a bigger discussion about other uses for parking as well, but I think it would be beneficial if we started with hotels and then go from there.
And the current parking standard for hotels, I believe, is at one space per unit?
Correct.
It is one space per unit when there's no kitchen or kitchenette. If
Right.
there is a kitchenette, it's 1.2.
Okay. All right, thank you. And there's no, absent a restaurant or other conference space, there is no additional requirement for staff? Okay. All right, thank you. Just to get that on the table.
And we also, the long-term hotel use that we approved a couple months ago, I believe was 1.5 spaces per unit, if I'm correct. For the long
rental
term,
place.
Oh, yeah, right.
1.5. Okay.
Kelly, can I ask you how many opportunities there are for new hotels in town of Nags Head, city limits, town limits?
Just in terms of available land that would accommodate it, I honestly don't know that answer, but right now hotels are allowed in the C2 district. So any property that could accommodate a hotel in the C2 district, it's an option. Then we have the hotel overlay, which is part of the area of Lakeside where this current hotel is proposed. So,
Any other overlays that are undeveloped?
I don't know of any other properties in the hotel overlay that could accommodate another hotel, to be honest.
Well, that are not already, they're developed in some use. There's
Max to
development.
a single-family
Right,
home
yes,
or commercial
Correct.
property.
right.
My concern's also redevelopment, not just open lots sitting there.
Well, and we,
I don't have a problem discussing, I mean, if
Right.
staff wants to go through the exercise of any of that.
right. I don't either. My concern would be like existing hotels that may be attempting to renovate or expand themselves. Because we've lost some of those in the past because we had excessive standards for them. And so I think I would want us to be really careful with any new standard that those existing hotels that are already kind of bound by a lot of restrictions that we wouldn't,
That are in operation.
that are in operation today, that we not sort of crimp them any further than they are. Mr. Brinkley?
I spoke to Commissioner Lambert about it, and I guess haven't considered it for existing. I think we were talking about it for the proposed, even though that's already approved, and it does seem like our standard is not where it should be when you look at, they had 80-some rooms, and it just didn't, when you look at workers and stuff like that. I mean,
Workers, deliveries,
yeah, I don't mind asking.
If we're gonna do that, I think that the town staff should do the research with hotel owners to understand what is 100% occupancy
And I
on the
would-
rooms and when the flow comes in and when the flow exits.
And I would support that, starting with town staff, if we want to
Okay.
look at that.
Right, thank you. Right, so I think I'm seeing a consensus that we ask town staff to look at this carefully with consideration of existing properties and with consultation with the industry to look at so that we really right-size this. There is the sense that it's not quite right, but, that we do whatever we need to do to sort of get it right-sized.
Can we go on and do restaurants at the same time, since they're gonna be going through the efforts of talking? Because if you have, most of the hotels that we have, other than the ones that are west side or in the center, do have some type of food and beverage service.
Uh-huh. I think that's reasonable. Okay. All right, okay. Thank you. Commissioner Sears?
I have nothing.
Commissioner?
Good, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I will ask Commissioner Brinkley when he returns. So that brings us to the mayor's agenda, and I had sent an email a bit ago. So Andy and I have been talking, and we have talked with the facilitator who came in and helped us last time, and the idea is that we continue to have fall retreats, and that we have one, but that, we're generally in a good place with our overall plan and where we're going. This would be more of a check-in kind of exercise, so we don't need to do more than one day. So we would do a one-day exercise. I think it's always beneficial that we do it at least once a year. And so, are there any preferred dates? We had talked to the consultant, and we had October 11th or 18th, which were both Fridays. October 17th would be a Thursday, and then either the 28th or 29th. All of those are in October.
All of those are in October?
Yep. October 11, 17, 18, 28, or 29. You're all open. Yes, sir.
I don't see any problems.
Lambert, Commissioner Sears,
Not the end of the month.
not the end. So 11, 17, or 18?
I think the 11th.
11th is good.
It's a Friday? No, it's
Yeah.
October.
Yeah, October.
It's about the 18th.
Okay. It's clear for everybody else. The 18th is a Friday, so let's take the 18th. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And if any topics you would bring to that, please shoot the manager an email or mention that to the manager. We'll be developing an agenda and probably won't actually get that agenda to you till about a week ahead, more than likely a week or two ahead. But if you have any topics you think ought to be on that agenda, please let us know. We're going to go to closed session, so before I do that, is there other business to come before the board before we go into closed session?
Were you going to ask Commissioner Brinkley
Am I supposed to ask you something?
if he had under his agenda?
Oh, shoot, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right, because you were out of the room. I forgot
about
to
that.
ask you when you came. Thank you, Carolyn. Good catch. All right, hearing no other business, then I would move that we go into closed session to confer regarding matters related to attorney-client privilege, to include a CRC variance at the Junco Street beach access, use of the town site at 105 West Sea Chase Drive, and to preserve that privilege pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3, and to discuss possible acquisition of real property located at 4222 South Croatan Highway pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A5.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. The board will be in closed session. Okay, the board has returned to open session, and I'm going to ask Mr. Leidy's assistance in reporting out and the motions we need to take here.
Yes, sir. The the board did confer with the town attorney and did give instructions to the town attorney and the town manager. No other actions need to be reported at this time, but there are a series of motions, I believe, that y'all are prepared to take.
Okay. There are two motions that we need to take this morning coming out of open session, and the first is a resolution to authorize the sale of real property pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 160A-274 for what is commonly known as the event site, and this would be for the town of Nags Head to sell its undivided interest in that property to the county.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. The second is a resolution authorizing the sale of real property pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 160A-274, and that is for 105 West Sea Chase Drive.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, great, thank you. I asked about other business. I heard none before we went into closed session, so a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. you, everybody.